Welcome back to Memos to the President. I'm Ylli with a special competitive studies project. I have a really interesting guest today in my show. I have Brian Moore, who's the Chief Policy Officer with a company called Bot Auto. And they are based out of Texas, and they're doing some amazing stuff with autonomous vehicles, specifically trucks. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into Bot Auto, the company, and everything you guys have been doing in that space, because you've had some major milestone you just completed recently, let's talk a little bit about you, who you are. I know you spent some time in DC. You had some incredible jobs here at the Treasury Department. So can you elaborate a little bit about your background and how did you get here?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I was in DC for a number of years, all at the Treasury Department, all working on national security matters. First, I was at Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, which is the office that develops and implements and enforces sanctions programs. So a lot of economic statecraft. From there, I moved over to the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, which is at that time kind of a small operation. Now is much, much larger. But it was a group, an interagency group that Treasury led that looked at foreign investment in the United States that could impact national security. So think, foreign investment in very sensitive technologies, technologies that have dual-use applications, military applications, or technologies that could contain large amounts of U.S. persons' data, any emerging technologies that the U.S. government thinks is sensitive in one way or another, and particularly in a national security context, that maybe they want to look at that foreign investment and make sure that it doesn't have nefarious purposes. So fantastic, and interesting experience. And it really set me up for how to think about innovation and foreign investment and global operations and sensitive technologies for a career in Silicon Valley. And in the past few years, I've worked in the autonomous vehicle space. Mm-hmm. And 2 years ago, we started Bot Auto, which is in the AV space, specifically on the trucking side. Mm-hmm. So it's been fascinating with that background, now kind of applying it to the policy space when it comes to emerging technologies, but this time being on the other side.
Right. Is there any famous stories you can tell us, you can share with us from the CFIUS days? Because every case I think CFIUS has is really interesting and like special and unique. Something you're proud of, like, that day you stopped some malign actor from buying something or investing somewhere in the United States.
Yeah, I would say it's actually more a story of the opposite. So it's for a good reason, the U.S. government and CFIUS has their guard up, and so that once a case comes before them, they take a close look at it, but they kind of have a lot of skepticism. And then as they dig into the case and dig into the technology and work with the entire interagency and learn more about it, a lot of the times they come to the conclusion that maybe this technology or this aspect of it isn't as sensitive as we thought. Right. So I kind of view those as the successes. Is we as an organization we allowed that investment to go through, because we came to the conclusion that we're actually okay with the level of technology that company was at, or we actually we came to the conclusion that it wasn't as sensitive as we thought. We don't want to block in foreign investment when we don't have to.
Right.
So and a lot, sometimes we do, I think. And in this one instance that I'm thinking of, we were able, through rigorous conversation, and it took forever to get there. This is like a 6-month case, which is a very, very long time for the Treasury Department or CFIUS to do that. But the end conclusion allowed for the investment. I've seen that company thrive since then, and I think it was a good thing for the technology. It was a good thing for American leadership and innovation. And ultimately, it was a good thing for U.S. national security, because we were able to look into it and really get comfortable that there wasn't a huge national security risk here. So it wasn't necessarily that we blocked a malign investment, which does happen a lot. But for one reason or another, that one stands out to me as a success. It was allowing that money to come in, because it is a dual mandate. It's not just to monitor for national security risks, but it's also to promote that open door investment policy.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that piece gets forgotten.
Absolutely. Good story, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
Usually the opposite of what you expect.
Definitely.
But
Yeah.
Bot Auto, why did you guys launch the company? Why in Texas, and why about trucks?
Yeah. So I mean, if once you look under the hood of the industry, it's quite obvious. Autonomous vehicles are coming. It offers a lot in terms of mobility. It's an economic story. It's a national security story. It's American leadership. And it's a frontier technology that the United States is currently leading in, and we have a good chance to maintain that leadership. The trucking side is extremely obvious because there is a logistics issue in this country. We have a very, very large driver shortage. We all saw that and felt it during COVID. We all saw, the containers stuck at the ports. We saw, the jam in the supply chain. Folks couldn't get things that they needed, and a lot of the times those are quite, sensitive and, urgent needs of medical equipment, things like that. So there's a huge shortage of drivers in this country. Some put it in between 80 to 120,000. Even on the low end, that's a massive amount of drivers that we need. The problem is there aren't many drivers joining this industry. It's dying in a sense. A lot of folks are exiting the space. You're seeing this country start to try to resolve that in ways that have caused some problems. There, as maybe you've seen in the news, there's a hold on granting visas to foreign drivers. There's an issue with folks driving trucks that don't have the English language capabilities. So we're trying to plug this gap through ways that are maybe not the best. But the short of it is there is a huge driver shortage. And we see an opportunity where autonomous vehicles can not only fill that shortage, but make the industry a lot better.
Right.
I mean, drivers right now, you can only drive so far before you have to stop. I mean, legally, you can maybe drive maximum 11 hours in a day, and then you have to stop and wait until your clock starts over. Autonomous vehicles, they don't need to sleep.
Right.
So the concept of a heavy duty truck carrying a ton of goods from one point to another 24 hours at a time, maybe it stops here and there for maintenance, but in essence 24 hours a day.
Right.
I mean that offers us huge opportunities to really supercharge not just the supply chain but our economy. I mean, the transportation of goods is the backbone of the economy, and if we can double or triple the efficiency of that, that'll have follow-on effect everywhere.
No, absolutely. Can you tell me, because look, this effort has been going on for many, many years.
Yeah.
And we have had the hopes and the downfalls and then hopes again. Why are you hopeful this time around that this is going to succeed?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question because the autonomous vehicle industry it's been around a while. The promises have been there even longer, and probably even more dreams crushed and lots of companies have gone out of business. And it's just we've heard a lot about this. When is it actually going to happen? So I think we all felt the ChatGPT moment in the past couple of years. So we've reached this pivot point where the technologies that kind of underpin AI and autonomous vehicles, it has supercharged in efficiency. You can do things way better, way quicker, way cheaper. And we're seeing that now applied to autonomous vehicles, and now we're starting to see deployment. I mean, we see the robo-taxis on the road. You see them expanding to different countries and different regions. And now we're seeing on the trucking side, we're moving out of that testing phase, that closed course phase, that driver behind the wheel testing phase, to actual deployment of the vehicle on public roads without a human behind the wheel. And that doesn't happen without the rigorous safety evidence that proves that it's acceptably safe. And the reason that we can now do that, and there's other companies doing it too, is because of the kind of new generation of technologies that we're all using to really supercharge this and make it work and make it safe and reach that deployment stage. So in short, it's just the changes and the developments in the technology really in the past 2 or 3 years that have allowed us to do so much more. And it's
I agree with you. I think the stars are aligned now for this industry to take to the next step. Tell me more about where do you guys stand in terms of the level 4, capability?
Yeah.
Where did you start and where are you now?
Yeah, so it's always been L4.
Yeah.
L4 is the business model. I mean, a lot of aspects of the autonomous vehicle industry, the business case isn't there unless you can remove the human. The human is largely the expensive part of the operation, and that's
the obstacle.
To
the success.
There's not much of a business for us with a driver in there. I mean, that's the status quo. What are we adding? And there is stuff to be added in the L2 and L3 space, the drive assist.
Yeah.
And the lane keeping and the things that you're starting to see in really everyday vehicles. All of that is great. But for a business to to be able to succeed in the L4 space, you obviously need to remove the driver. So we've always been L4. That is a completely driverless, humanless truck. We'll always have truck drivers because we'll always be testing new routes rigorously. We'll always need them testing new features. Anytime we need to change the model, we need to throw that driver back in there, test it with him, and we're testing the data and we're validating it before that driver gets taken back out again. But it's always L4, which means that it is not L5. Which L5 is, think of it as like, that's the end goal for autonomy. That's the genius mode where you can drop the truck or drop the vehicle anywhere in the world and it's going to be able to figure it out. L4 is autonomous in the sense that there's no human in it, but it is a constrained environment. So, for example, we're headquartered in Texas, in Houston, and we are developing, think of it like a digital railroad. So we are laying the virtual tracks between Houston and San Antonio for our autonomous truck to be capably driven in a safe way on that route without a human in it. It is L4 because the second it is told to take a wrong turn or for some reason ends up outside of its ODD, its operational design domain, it's not going to be able to function. It will tell itself to pull over safely and do what we call a minimal risk condition and stop. Because it is outside of its ODD. So think of, you're all of a sudden you get plopped in a different country and you're like, crap, I don't speak the language in this country. I need to take a break and collect my thoughts. It's kind of the same for an autonomous vehicle. If it finds itself outside of its ODD, it's not going to work. So that is L4. So that's where we're at. That's where the industry's at. L5 is quite a ways away. And it's funny because when I was in the U.S. government, L5 is the goal and the big concern as well. For we want to beat other countries to L5. L4 is definitely how you get there. L1 is how you start, and L4 is where we're at, and L5 is the next feature of it. But right now, we are constrained with what we call our ODD. So we will perfect a region, perfect a city, maybe even perfect a lane before you move on to another. So that's kind of why you see the same in the robotaxi space. Oh, why is it available in this city but not that city, or this country but not that country? Because it's not L5. Exactly. It needs to be perfected for that region first.
You mentioned other countries. Obviously, I think China is our nearest competitor, if not, maybe ahead in some areas when it comes to this. Can you tell us more? I mean, you're a policy guy, so I'm sure you're tracking, you're following what's happening in China. Where are they in this space?
Yeah. So I think, in a lot of technologies, we are in a leadership position, or we assume we're in a leadership position. I mean, we've just gotten very used to America being the best at everything. And we can be the best at everything, and we are the best at a lot of things. But China is super good at autonomous vehicles. They're good on the robotaxi space, and they're getting better on the trucking space. But they have the government and policy support to really kind of ride the momentum, and they have those types of tailwinds. So they're moving quickly. You see a number of Chinese robotaxi companies operating and expanding. They're expanding in Europe. They're expanding in the Middle East, expanding in Southeast Asia. So they have, gotten comfortable at home, and now they are moving abroad. You don't really see as much expansion with the U.S. counterparts or the European counterparts. It's moving a bit slower, and I think those policy tailwinds that I think some of the Chinese competitors have. I think that's a huge advantage for them as to why they can expand and then why we're not.
What are some of the most famous, most popular, and most effective brands that they have right now?
Yeah, well, Baidu has a good one.
Okay.
I don't know how I would peg the ranking between them, but there's about 2 or 3.
Got it. Yeah. You talked about how they get, assisted by the government. What do you think our government is doing, what they can do? I mean, this is memos to the president. So, I mean, you worked in Washington. What should the White House or Congress do to actually accelerate this? Yeah,
so, I mean, both countries want leadership in the space. China wants to lead in AVs. We want to lead in AVs. Europeans want to lead in AVs. It's not just a vehicle. Autonomy as a technology is going to, you think of it as infrastructure. It's going to be embedded into how countries move goods. It's going to be embedded into the companies that support transportation. So as you're building out the fabric of a new infrastructure, and that's really what autonomous vehicles are, we're building out the 21st century fabric of our economic infrastructure. You want to lead in that space because you're going to be integrated with all the companies in that country. The soft power component of it, the individuals in those countries, they're going to see those companies operating. They're going to get more comfortable with those companies than the countries that are behind those companies. So it's a huge a goal for us to lead in that space. We have this issue where the technology is ready. The technology is really good, and I do think we have the best technology on the trucking side and the robotaxi side. But we got the policy issue. So if we don't lead in this space and we end up being second or third, it's not because we didn't have the best tech, it's because we didn't have the best policies. And so right now we don't have a national federal framework that says autonomous vehicles are okay. So we have to live and die by state policy. So I mean, imagine you're driving in Texas or you're driving here. You cross the bridge, you're going into Virginia, and all of a sudden your driver's license doesn't work. There's no reciprocity, or there's some aspect of your vehicle that doesn't work. All the rules are different. You don't have a permit for that state. That's how it is with autonomous vehicles right now. We have a state-by-state patchwork approach. And states are moving along with the absence of the federal framework. States they're moving nicely. Texas, for example, just put in place an autonomous vehicle law. That's great. It's great for everybody. It ensures safety. It ensures great collaboration with stakeholders and the state and the regulators, and it enforces companies to be safe and to be transparent. So there are models for these types of policies. The federal government just needs to kind of get moving on it. Right. There is a lot of good momentum here on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, in the White House, the current Department of Transportation. It is starting to become a common understanding that we need to move in this space and we need to lead in this space, but we're just not there yet. I mean, there are draft bills. Some bills are moving nicely, but we don't have that federal framework today. We don't have that federal preemption that says autonomous vehicles are okay in every state. And when you don't have that, you don't have as much investment. You don't have the companies that are supporting the supply chain of the industry. So you're going to lag in capital. You're going to lag in the sensors and the other types of components that go on the truck. So if we don't get it right, we're not just going to lose on the AV side. We're going to lose on the supply chain side that supports these types of vehicles. And we do kind of see that. I mean, we don't have a robust enough sensor manufacturing industry here in the United States. And if I was going to go and start a sensor manufacturing company, and I go try to seek investment, and my investor says, so you want to make sensors for vehicles that aren't even acceptable in all 50 states, maybe that's not a great investment. So you can see how this kind of cascades. So we don't have the policies yet. I think we will, but it's impacting the AV adoption, the AV deployment, the capital needs of the AV companies, and it's also affecting the supply chain of the industry. If we want U.S. autonomous vehicle companies to succeed, and we also want them to rely on U.S. components, you need the policies in place, or else the rest of it just doesn't come.
Right. Couple of weeks ago, you have achieved a major milestone with your company. Can you talk a little bit about the humanless validation?
Yeah.
What was it? How long was it? Because I think it's an incredible what you guys have done, but it's hard just to describe it.
Yeah.
If you don't see, the videos that local news, I think I've seen it from Texas, really covered your story.
Yeah. Well, let me try to paint a visual picture here. So we're headquartered in Houston, which is a huge logistics hub. Texas is a trucking paradise. There's so much that goes on. So we have an autonomous Class 8 vehicle, which is a big rig. And it leaves a truck parking facility where typically a truck would go and pick up a container. And that container could be filled with laptops or Beanie Babies, or I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but whatever. It could be stuffed with anything. It goes and picks up that container. It hooks it onto the truck, and that truck goes to its destination. So in this video and in our validation run that we did, it has the container on it, and it is on what we call a surface street or a side road. It stops at a stoplight. It lets traffic go through. It recognizes all the lights. It recognizes that it needs to stop. Then it approaches a turn. It takes a wide turn, as these trucks do, and it successfully does that. It it encounters all the vehicles around it. It takes into account their speed and where they're at, and it safely conducts a wide turn, and then it gets onto an interstate highway, I-10, going westbound from Houston to San Antonio. And this is right around 7 p.m., so it's still a little bit light out. There's a lot of vehicles still on the road. This is a heavily congested traffic route. A lot of trucks on this road. And it navigates, people cutting the truck off. It navigates an on-ramp, an off-ramp, an overpass. It turns, and it goes back home to that same facility where it picked up a container. Again, navigates those side roads, more stoplights, stop signs, other, non-compliant drivers that we all encounter on the road. And then it goes back into that facility where it would drop off that container. So it was like a mini version of what you would see in a full commercialized route, where it would travel hundreds or maybe even over 1,000 miles, picks up a container, drops off a container. So this was a miniature version of that.
Right.
It was Houston, between Houston and San Antonio for about 50 miles, round trip, comes back home, and there was no human on board. It was completely autonomous. It was not remotely controlled. It required zero remote assistance. So everything that it did by itself. It didn't rely on anybody else, just our model that we built. And the reason that's so important is because all of the work that goes into doing that can take years. Excuse me. And you do see some companies still at that point where they haven't done that, but they want to do it soon. But it's been years, because it requires rigorous testing of the model, really years of a driver in collecting data, plugging that data back into our simulator back home at headquarters, running through all these millions of scenarios. Okay, what if this was on the road? What if a couch fell out of the sky? It has to kind of map against all of what we call these edge cases and all these situations that can occur on the roadways, even super rare events. And it needs to give us a figure that it's acceptably safe, and it would have navigated those scenarios appropriately. So it's just a combination of a lot of real world data combined with a very powerful simulator. And the reason we can do all this efficiently and quickly is because we have great capabilities in compute that have developed in the past couple of years. But it's that development of what we call a safety case on the back end, that once you get to a point where we feel confident and the data supports it, that it can handle all of these different events, then you're able to pull the driver.
Right.
You can't do it before then. And why that's so significant that we did that, because that says that we reached that point where all of the data suggests that we can safely pull that driver from the vehicle and put it onto public roadways, encountering other public road users. That's why it's so significant, and that's why we're at a point where this is finally going to be deployed. Yeah.
No, fascinating, and I saw the video. It's truly impressive. I wanted to talk because for many years, this whole issue of autonomous vehicles, specifically trucks, has been associated with truck drivers losing their jobs.
Yeah.
You talked at the beginning of the podcast with the shortage we have for drivers of these trucks. So can you talk a little bit about what happens here with the future of truck driving when it comes to humans?
Yeah. So the figures, you're absolutely right. Right now it's estimated there's about 100,000 drivers that we need on the road today.
Yeah.
There's drivers today. And it gets worse over time. If we don't fix this issue, it gets worse. We're expecting 50% increase in freight capacity over the next 10, 20 years. But we have declining truck driver availability. So we have fewer and fewer truck drivers. That gap is getting larger, but our freight needs are going up. So that's a big issue. Only autonomy can plug that gap. But that gap is massive. I mean, I need 100,000 autonomous trucks tomorrow at Bot Auto to put one truck driver out of business.
Right.
So we as an industry, if we had 5,000 autonomous trucks on the road, across all our companies, in the next 5 years, all of us would say that's a huge success.
Right.
That puts us at, without considering the fact that the truck driver shortage is getting worse and the freight demand is increasing, we've filled 5% of that gap. So we need a huge amount of both. We need a ton of truck drivers to enter the industry, and we also need a ton of autonomous vehicles to enter the industry. It's not either or. We need both. Even with both, we're still going to have a shortage over the next few years. That's That's just a fact, unfortunately.
Right.
That's how bad it is.
Right.
So, there's that, but we also employ truck drivers. We test these routes.
Right.
We've got lots of drivers, and they're super, well paid. They get to come home at night. They're testing routes. They're not driving 1,000 miles to the middle of nowhere, and then maybe have to find a motel somewhere along the highway, and then maybe hopefully make it back the next day or the next day. So we employ lots of drivers. There's a huge need for them in this space. So there's a job for them. There's a job for them today, tomorrow, 10 years from now.
Right.
So it's not a tomorrow issue.
Right.
Or
It's not a zero sum, I think, in this case. Yeah.
no, even on the robotaxi space. I mean, I think there's a recent report out that says even in a best case scenario by 2040, you'd maybe see 20% of the vehicles on the road being autonomous. That's not that many.
Right.
I think a lot of people would assume it'd be much higher.
Yeah.
And that's how it is with these technologies. You kind of assume that it's going to be this onslaught very quickly, but that's never really borne out. It's always a very kind of slow drip.
Right. My last question, Brian, is it's one thing to talk about robotaxis. It's another thing to talk about big autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
And so how would you tell just a regular person what are the risk and safety things that you have put in place that you think people should not be worried about these things because they're safe, they will deliver from point A to point B, and this is the future we will encounter with the necessary infrastructure that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question because I mean it's a huge truck.
Right, right, yeah.
When we get on the road and you always get nervous driving next to these trucks if there's a human in it or not. They're just massive. One wrong move and bad things happen. And when those trucks do get into accidents, the fatality rate's significantly higher than other types of accidents. So it's a very valid question. So what I would say is the safety case that a lot of these companies abide by, and there's international standards that everybody kind of maps to. It requires so much testing that the model will have seen so much more about the world that we will never see in our lifetime. And we've probably encountered non-compliant road users and weird scenarios. But our autonomous trucks, because we have so much real world data and we have such a powerful simulator that we can reenact all of these types of scenarios that maybe comprises all of the scenarios that every human being on Earth has seen before, but you and I have maybe seen a subset of that. It has seen all of those scenarios. Yeah. So think of you living a million lifetimes, all over the world. You've seen a lot of different, road scenarios.
Yeah.
That's what an autonomous vehicle can do. And that's really the power of it. So it's not just like one new brain and one new road user in the world. It's a brain and a new user that has the collective information and experience of millions of road users, and it gets to apply that on the road.
Right.
So, when you and I are driving, you would hope that everybody else on the road is an absolute professional, and they've seen everything, and they've been driving a long time. That's how AVs will be. It's almost like driving next to an autonomous vehicle that has lived a million lives and has really seen it all and done it all. You layer on the fact that it's not getting aggressive, it's not getting angry, it's not drunk.
It's never tired,
It's never tired. It's not texting, which is
it's always on.
Yeah.
Always scanning, always absorbing information.
And it is baked in to be a boring driver that isn't in a rush.
Right.
Then you get perhaps the safest road users we've ever seen. Right. And I know that for a fact. I mean, we're going to a scenario where the roads will be safer than they've ever been. Right. I mean, the sad reality is I think we lose 40,000 people on the roads every year in America. About half of those are a quarter are speeding and a quarter are drunk driving. Over 90% are human error. Right. So, I mean, our autonomous vehicles don't speed. They go slowly. When you see them, and I encourage you to come out and get on the truck, it's a boring experience. It is meant to go slow. It is meant to be the
risk averse.
Yeah, let that person go. Let them do their thing. We can hang back. We're not in a rush. And it goes back into the trucking requirements that kind of incentivize quick action and quick driving. Our vehicles don't have to get there within 8 hours or 9 hours. It can operate 24 hours a day, so it can go slow, and it's still going to get there way quicker than a human would have been. Right. So all of these data points are layering on safety and supporting a safe vehicle, and And I think we are, as a society, getting more comfortable with that, particularly as robo-taxis roll out. I mean, go and ride in a Waymo or the robo-taxi. You're like, wow, that was actually pretty awesome. It was really safe, and I'm going to keep ordering that.
Right,
and
right,
that's kind of how we're seeing it play out. And I think we'll see that in the trucking space as well. And once we see the data, once we see the fatalities coming down, it's going to be a no-brainer.
Right.
And I'm excited for that.
Right. Brian, thank you so much for being our guest today. Again, incredible company, Bot Auto. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.